Hey, hey, hey. Tanya here with Adventures for Connection. And this is an inaugural. This is a really important day today. Today we have Alex joining us. We're bringing in the masculine because it's been very feminine up until now. And we're really grateful to have Alex here. Welcome, Alex.
Oh, thank you so much, Tanya. Yes, it's a pleasure to be here. Very happy to bring in some of that yang energy to such a vibrant yin that you guys have been providing.
Yeah, and Alex and I met through David Pill's Oracle, White Star Teachings that many of you know. And the reason that Alex and I connected was at the Dead Lake, which is beautiful in itself, and to share that energy. And he was going through quite an interesting time, a shift in his life. Do you want to share a little more about that and yourself so the viewers can get to know you a bit?
Absolutely, sure. Well, as these shows continue, I will reveal the origin stories of my superhero powers. But for the time being, I will brief kind of the last transitions that brought me to Tanya, and with that in particular was my journey through masculinity, where I ended up having to take some really big leaps and some risks in my life, where I quit a career where I had been working in the service industry for 15 years. At that point, worked my way up from being a dishwasher to a kitchen supervisor and eventually a restaurant manager. And I was miserable, and I knew something needed to change. I had been well into my metaphysical journey of learning and absorbing information, but I hadn't been putting it into play. And I was forced to, and I asked to. So I ended up doing development with things like martial arts. And after I had earned my first black belt, there was a shift in me that said, it's time to go. And I left my hometown. I quit my career after 15 years. I had no idea what I was going to do, but I trusted the fact that I could make whatever I needed to make happen. So that faith is what really allowed me to bring my tribe together. I called on David Piltz, and he provided me a home for my first year out here until I got my feet underneath me. And that was when I started to put it all into play. I went through things like my naming ceremony to earn my name Grey Wolf, and I discovered so much more about the depths of myself and what it meant to me to be a man, not what things were trying to tell me what masculinity was, but what it meant to me individually and authentically. And that took me on a whole nother journey to another plateau moment that so many of us have, where we think, oh, I got this. I'm in such great shape. I have everything down packed. And that's when I met someone who I thought I called into my space, who I did call into my space. I had different expectations with the way it was supposed to go. And life definitely in the universe wanted me to take something different than what I initially thought I was supposed to be receiving from that. And it took me to one of the deepest shifts of facing shadow and facing a now an opportunity, like I had saying I hadn't been getting all up to this point, opportunities to act on my masculine, to act on all of this teachings. And I was presented with that moment with my Achilles heel, which is my heart. I am a heart on my sleeve type of guy. And that was where universe asked me to step up to my absolute biggest challenge that I've ever had to face. And as I was going through those darkest moments was when I chose to fight the hardest. And that was when I was called out to Vedette Lake. At that moment, literally 2 days before, my mind, my heart, my entire world got utterly shattered 2 days before I was supposed to go out to Vedette. And I had the conversation with myself. Am I spiritually in a space to hold for other people during ceremony right now? Am I capable of going out and actually doing that? And not only did I know that it was my service, it was my calling, that I had to be there at the time, but it wasn't just to provide, it was to receive. What better place to heal than to be in a place of truly being open and vulnerable and connected with just everyone around you who was trying to do the exact same thing, which allowed me to do just that. And again, as Tanya said, when I first got there, she could feel the weight. Everyone could feel the weight that I was carrying. I wasn't shy about it. I was facing it head on. And that's why I wasn't going to hide from it. I wasn't going to put on a show like nothing was bothering me. Everyone could see I was willing to allow what needed to take place, which was one of the biggest lessons that I learned through masculinity, which is accountability. Step up and be accountable for everything, what you're feeling, what you're facing, and how to move through it. Otherwise, it controls you. It runs over you at that point. We went through these ceremonies, and as a firekeeper, when you get trained as a firekeeper to do sweat lodges, it is about masculine. It is all about pouring your masculine energy into creating the fire, heating the rocks, which then in essence become the sperm or the fertilizer, which goes into the womb, being the lodge itself. So everyone inside comes out reborn. The masculine energy I ended up pouring into that fire produced the best fire I've ever made in my entire life. And I mean, the heat off of that thing, Tanya, we couldn't be closer than 10 feet to it. It was, it was scorching. And I was so acknowledged of what that meant on such a deep level, on the fact of knowing that everything I had gone through, no matter all the pain, all the darkness, all the shadow, because of my intention on facing it with true accountability, it poured in that energy. And I now had a physical reflection and a manifestation to say I was doing the work and I was doing it the right way. And that continued to ripple into where we are now, and a number of other events that I'm sure we'll get to in conversation. But that was really what led me to meeting Miss Tanya and creating this connection of stepping up into being leaders of leaders, and knowing that you don't just get to preach things, you have to do the work. You have to walk that walk first yourself. And it's been a pleasure and it's been an honor, and I'm so glad to be here to be able to share it with you.
Absolutely. And a couple things. One, like, share, please. Really appreciate that because it helps with the algorithm, and we love you all. Thank you for being here. Really appreciate it. Hey, Carmela, here by Cannabis.
Hello.
Yeah, and Arlene. And we have a whole bunch over on Rumble. We have Ozzy. We have Freedom.
Oh, lovely, lovely people.
Bingo, Cindy. Thank you all for being here. 5D Gaia, Luna, love it. Thank you for coming and joining us in this conversation. And we're really honored that you're here. And, as we discuss this, Alex, can you just share a little more about what a sweat lodge is for the viewers that don't know?
Sure. Now, depending, I guess, culturally where you are around the world, you may find slight variances between ceremonial protocols and things like that. But the basic premise of my understanding is, regardless of if it's a hut that was made out of special ties and special woods that were chosen and blankets from the community, or if it's an in-earth hut that was dug into the ground and made out of clay, the essence of it is people receive what they put into the sweat lodge. Now, this is a place where you go to offer yourself, whatever you have to offer, to spirit, to speak clearly with spirit and receive whatever is waiting for you that you may have been blocking off, that you may not be open to receiving, or you've been distracted to, or something that so many of us get caught up in the day-to-day lives, as well as the aspect of this transformation and meeting spirit and meeting creator within that aspect is a transformative rebirth, where when you're shown these things that you've been ignoring, that you haven't been open to receiving on your own accord, it allows you to step into a new version of yourself. All of these pieces of yourself that you haven't been acknowledging, that now you are incorporating, you're not who you were when you entered the sweat lodge. And a lot of this breaks down to the protocols that go through. And like I was kind of explaining earlier, for myself and the traditions that I was trained under when it came to firekeeping and sweat lodges, was as a firekeeper, that is the masculine role. There are a few different roles where hut building and water gathering, fire keeping, medicine keeper or elder. In a lot of instances, it's usually just the elder who is the medicine keeper. There are numerous different roles to play during the sweat lodge. My training as a fire keeper was the masculine energy, where at the beginning of the ceremony, in a very, very traditional essence, as the sun rises, I rise with the sun. No matter what time of day it is, I rise with the sun, and I go and I immediately start harvesting all of the materials that I need for the fire, all the wood, all of the kindling, all of the bark, everything. It really depends on your methods. That's also when I gather all the rocks and I start to actually build the pit, and I light it, and I'm supposed to tend to the fire for the entire day. No food, no water. I fast through the entire process because I'm pouring all that I have into this fire. I am the masculine energy that is now rebirthing the community that steps into the lodge. The water bearers are usually the women, and they take care of the feminine aspect, water being that healing, that nurturing, really, really powerfully life-bearing aspect of what we're bringing as far as elements are concerned to the table. And within the traditions of needing to pour the water onto the rocks as they come into the lodge, knowing that the rocks are representative of the masculine and the representative of, we'll say, sperm or semen as it's coming into the womb of the lodge itself. That water then going on releases, and any medicines that are within now are being released. That spirit comes up again. Anything you've been holding on to is released. And as you inhale and you take it in through your skin and your lungs and all the different parts of your body, you absorb these pieces of yourself that are being reborn with the combination of the masculine and the feminine elementals in that same space. Also knowing that within the earth itself, where the pit is built, and the steam where the air is being raised, there is a true alchemic reaction that is taking place within there to combine all of these new elements into who you're going to become walking out of the lodge itself. Firekeeper is also the first one to defend against the lodge, because I'm outside. I don't go in for the rounds themselves. If the lodge is for some reason attacked by any means, I'm the first one that defends while everyone else escapes and leaves. And because of that, it's also a very prestigious honor that is respected by the community afterwards, where the banquets that take place, any of the festivities really don't start until the firekeeper is honored first within those places, because then that is an acknowledgement to say we're safe. Firekeeper's good. He's taken his role day. He's taken his hat off. He's okay. The rest of us can do it now too. So that's kind of the background of the traditions that I've been trained in when it comes to firekeeping and sweat lodges.
Right. And so on this particular case, we actually rebuilt the lodge, new willows, new ties, and then there was blankets, and David brought a bunch of them that then the women go around in a specific way and create the womb, which is super beautiful. And then the heat within, and I can't say enough. And the Norma, how are you doing today? She just kind of slid in. So
she did. She was right on time, right when she needed to be.
We were at a Temazcal here, which was interesting because they're both above ground. One was round with a dome. The other one was much more square, which is the one we used that day. And I'm like, but that one's masculine, that one's feminine.
Yeah.
No. I was like, they said this is traditional. And I'm like, no, that one's masculine. That one's like I can see with my eyes and I can feel with my heart. But it was really beautiful because there was more females there. There were a couple, and she held the ceremony and he supported. And then it was actually quite a cool day for the area. So the fire wasn't getting hot enough. So like, we're just going to drop 2 rounds. We're going to do 3 rounds in one. Are you ready? So it was like to step it up even more. And what was your experience in the corner?
Oh yeah, it was beautiful. Just the smells, bringing in the elementals of, basically the 4 elements of the one, which is ether. And as I'm sitting there and the ceremony is taking place, with my eyes closed, or even with my eyes open, I could just see this silhouette, and it was that glowing white silhouette of someone meditating in front of me. So it was my first real sweat lodge, or I guess
Temescal.
Yeah.
And here it's called a Temescal.
So this was my first
Temescal.
real experience of something so intense, something so just exhilarating to experience, because I'm a fire sign, being that I'm Aries. So it's like, it was just beautiful, especially with the specific smells. And what is it that Kapow. Every time she lights the kapow, it takes me right back to that corner, sitting in the water and feeling the heat. And just, every time we light that up, that's exactly where I go every time. And it's such a beautiful process. It's a beautiful, death and rebirth and within oneself, to recognize, your level of strength, your level of integrity and honor, and recognizing that within yourself, to know that you can get through anything as long as you know exactly who you are, what steps you must take to recognize and understand self at levels that shows you the being that you are first, which helps guide this vessel, this human, through this experience in this realm. So
I completely agree, and that's where so much of my faith or conviction behind accountability comes into play, because that authentic self is really the highest that you could ever ask for to attain. Of one, the journey is going to continue. It's going to take us wherever we need to go, because it's a varying experience that is based off of multiple shared consciousnesses making a whole bunch of independent free will decisions. We're sharing one plane of existence, but we're all affecting it with our free will at the same time. Knowing that variable is at place, the only thing that I could ever ask for at the end of the day, be the most authentic version of me, because I know what I need to stay in that alignment. I know that self-discovery process had the elements that are going to replenish me, keep my cup full, the things that I need out of experiences. That's what's going to guide my course for the rest of it. We don't need to get lost in that. Well, what's my purpose? What do I need to do? That'll get worked out once you figure out who you are, and then you commit yourself to being who you are. Everything else works itself out at the end. I promise. Yeah,
absolutely. And it's funny because Rebecca over in Australia is saying, I knew Norma was fire. Yeah, I have both Sun and Moon and Aries too. So absolutely. Yeah. It's all about alchemizing.
Yes.
And as we're always alchemizing. And people that don't know the term, you think about lighting a match and starting a fire. That's alchemy. Yeah. You think about eating food and it coming out the other end, or drinking water. That's alchemy. So it's the transition of one substance to another. And as you go more into the metaphysical, your skills become greater and greater. What would you like to add to that, Alex?
Oh my goodness, this subject. Well, our good friend David Piltz, the Oracle, the very first time that I ever met him, years and years back now, God, I can't even remember how long it's been now. It's probably been, if not a decade, maybe over. I was at the point early enough in my journey where I was a very lost, very highly potently tuned in soul. So there was a lot of things that were taking place that were making me do this all over the map. I had no just control. I had no rudder, basically, right? So I was going in circles, and it was putting me into dark places. And mainly because I wasn't doing my shadow work. I didn't know how. I didn't have any guidance. So I was calling for a teacher. I realized at that particular moment, until I got more knowledge, I had hit a wall. I could not go any further until I received more knowledge. So I knew I needed a teacher. My sister goes, where does she go? I think she went to Arizona, perhaps. But she went to a Star Knowledge conference. And for those of you that don't know, Star Knowledge conferences are all about Star Nation teachings, our history within the Star Nation, the Native American history and teachings that have been spoken about by Chief Golden Light Eagle. And it's an absolutely rich plethora of research to get into. I promise you won't be disappointed. So my sister went to this event and she meets this guy, the Oracle David Pilz, who's doing readings for people. And she goes, "Oh my God, I love you. Whenever you come through Calgary next, come through my place." And my sister and I were living together in the same house. I was at work one day doing my kitchen work, just, la-di-da-di-da. I've got no real conscious awareness because, God, anyone who's worked in bars and restaurants, it's what a place to be for an empath. Oh, talk about trials by fire. So I come home and she told me that he was coming over, but I didn't think twice of it because I didn't know who the guy was and I didn't know how to feel people out at that time. So I show up after a long day of work. I open the door and he's standing, I don't know, 10 feet away from the main door, kind of in the kitchen doorway itself, but not in the kitchen. And he's standing with my sister. They just finished a reading. And he points and he looks at me as I walk in. And David goes, "Oh, that's him." My sister says, "Yeah, that's my brother. That's who you saw, right?" And I'm wondering what the hell they're talking about. So I walk over and I go, "Yeah, hi, I'm Alex." Without saying another word, he grabs my hand and says, "You're going to be the ultimate alchemist." And I said, "What's your name, man? Like, who are you? Like, how do you introduce yourself like that to people?" That's insane. But I've never lost that. That key, that simple phrase. I didn't even know about alchemy at that point. I had such a bare minimum knowledge of even the word or the concept, but that unlocked something so deep with me that it's led me to so much of what I'm able to offer today because of how alchemy alchemized my world is the best way to put it. Alchemy took place with alchemy, because as I started to learn about it, I really understood the applications went so far beyond a simple transmutation of something. It could replicate into the spirit realm simply as us coming together in this conversation. This is alchemy. We would not be having these topics, this frequency of energy that's being emitted to the universe in the exact same way that it is right now, without all of us being present and providing and producing for self. All of these elements have to be at play. If Norma didn't show up on time today, guess what? It wouldn't be the same. The whole that we're providing would not be the same as it is because she showed up on time. That's alchemy. Alchemy will, when we start to open our minds up to the combination, the in between, how everything is connected and how everything creates different wholes, it allows us to really understand a quantum depth to the way we experience reality and the way that we receive certain events in comparison to the person next to us who may have just witnessed the same event but is receiving it completely differently because their alchemy was different than ours when we were present for that shared experience. And again, it just allows us to see these quantum layers and these quantum pockets towards things, which is, I mean, people, if you aren't ready to expand your mind, you came to the wrong podcast.
Right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. And witnessing you go through that shift at the debt and release the what you were shown in that relationship.
Yeah.
And for you to be able to transmute and alchemize that and move through it versus suppressing it or trying to blame. So you were playing the victim, you were honoring yourself, you were honoring her, you were honoring your partner. And to me, that is profound as we move forward in the divine masculine and the divine feminine. It is the same either way. And we have both within us. We both have, we all have masculine and feminine. It's creating that balance and creating that container. And it's my understanding right now that the divine feminine is reaching out first to plug in these changes because they're leading by example. And we're not afraid because we will not be as, I want to use the right word, the bash keeps coming in. We won't be bashed for doing that,
Yeah.
whereas the masculine would be. And so now there's this beautiful dynamic and dance occurring where it's one and then the other, and then one and eventually side by side.
Yes.
Thoughts on that?
Yeah, you're completely right. And I mean, part of that shadow, part of that weight that I was carrying when I first got to the debt was much of what we're discussing right now. That emasculation, I guess, is a term. I have a weird perspective on emasculation, because at the same time, for it to take place, I have to allow it to take place. So there's a level of accountability that I have to always put into a scenario like that. But within that aspect, without doing all of that shadow work and having been emasculate, I wouldn't have been able to see that, and I wouldn't have been able to step up to actually rectify that within myself first. But that was the case, where so much of the weight that I was carrying, I felt, was because I had been in a space where I didn't feel like I could be vulnerably myself. I didn't feel like I could be a human. I didn't feel like I could have emotions. I didn't feel like I could really go outside of a context that was being defined for me, or expected of me, is probably a better way to put it. And I needed that clearance, and it was very forceful, because again, the heart center that I am, when I'm committed, I'm, especially in a relationship, I understand that we're supposed to go through the shitty times together. We're supposed to be there to lean on each other when things get really, really hard, because that's what true partnership is about, is you have to be that person that the other one can depend on no matter what. I don't care how much you have yet to argue about or anything, you will always have each other's backs no matter what. And that's true partnership to me. But I was in a space where that wasn't being offered necessarily back, or had the capacity to be offered back. So I had to be forced out of it. Universe knew I wasn't going to do it, because I was the fighter, the fighter for love. I was going to be there for it. So universe forced me out, and that put me into that space where I very much had to make those decisions very quickly, where I said I could fall into this toxic, horrendous pain that I felt, the worst pain I ever felt, the most reality shattering experience I had ever been through up to that point in my entire life. And instead of allowing it to traumatize me, I simply allowed it to be a trauma experience. But I wasn't going to let it traumatize me. And I made that choice. I made a conscious decision to say, yes, I just experienced trauma. I refuse to allow it to change the course, the direction of anything else outside of how I choose to integrate these things, how my conscious awareness is going to accept. And mainly because there was so much that took place on firsts for me out of experiences in life, that I wasn't going to let pain take that away from me, for starters. Second of all, I understood that when somebody responds in their world by lashing out, or being unaware of projecting their own shadow, that's how they're treating themselves inside, and B, treating them, demonizing them, because they're doing the best they freaking can in a scenario, and it's not living up to our expectations. They're doing the best that they can to their maximum capacity. Demonizing them for that literally just sticks the knife back in the wound that created that behavior to begin with. All of those acknowledgments brought me to say, this isn't about my ego. Feel the pain. Don't make it about, you did this to me, this happened to me, just experience it. And that allowed me to release, that allowed me to take my accountability to say, yes, this happened to me. Exactly, the turnaround, because I faced what I was being presented with. And I said, not only am I going to feel and fully allow myself to say I was hurt because this happened to me, but then I allowed it to do this and say, but what did I do to allow the situation? Where was I? Where was my element that I was adding to this alchemic experience that made it the whole that it was? Because if I wasn't adding anything to it, it wouldn't have been the way that it was. And that in and of itself is even an answer. If I wasn't adding anything to it, if I wasn't consciously present, how could I have expected things to have been in alignment with me if I wasn't putting anything into it? So all of these revelations came through, and it allowed me, like you saw, within a 2.5 day span to
Yeah.
go from Linus and basically that cloud over my head, dragging my blanket behind me, to shining at the end of that and actually being just as present as I basically am now, where I was able to shake that off. And then I was able to take that back with me. This is one of the keys, people. We can always go and we can do ceremonies. You can do retreats. Escaping and doing the work is one thing. And I'm using the term escaping specifically because if you don't understand that that's what you're doing, be more honest with yourself. Every one of us needs a point of escape from sometimes because it's just overwhelming. And guess what? If you've been trapped in a prison of things that you haven't been able to face, you got to escape from that. You just have to. It doesn't have to be a negative.
Have a new perspective.
Have a new perspective. Exactly. Don't look at it negatively. Think about, I'm doing this for my benefit. I'm doing this for my survival, for my safety. But understand it is still escaping because you have to go back. And doesn't mean back to that same scenario, back to this and that, but you have to bring yourself back to living in the world again and facing things that are going to trigger response, all of these different things. So what I was able to realize is through that journey of taking that accountability, I then was going to be presented with opportunities to put that accountability into play. And what I found immediately when I got back was I didn't have to wait for things to trigger me to do it. I saw an opportunity, or I felt an opportunity, and I was taking accountability and doing actions for things I didn't even think I needed to. Like, it wasn't on my radar until the opportunity was there. And I just said, oh yeah, this whole new state of energy is going, do it, go do it, be a man, go do it. And it brought out that whole new sense of accountability within myself that I didn't need to tell anybody about. I wasn't doing it to go tell the other people that were in the scenario. It was for me. It was all for me. And that was the other reason of doing that work and forgiving that entire scenario. I'm allowed to still look back and say, wow, yeah, that hurt me, but I forgive you. I actually truly forgive you, because not only am I not going to hold on to that for my benefit, I refuse to do that to anybody else. It doesn't matter if you hurt me like that or not. I would never put that ripple out into the quantum to say, damned to your soul or any of that. Basically, it is, you get healing or you're not in alignment with me, and you're going to find another space. It's just that simple.
Yeah,
I don't have
absolutely. I want to put this out to the listeners. When have you been traumatized by a relationship, and what did you do to move through it? And did you grow from it? We really want to hear from you. Yeah. I can say my last relationship, which is some time ago, we were really good friends, but we weren't working together per se, right? Yeah. We had lots of activities that we did together. And there was something that happened. He moved out while I was away rock climbing on a trip. Yeah. And he just emailed me, I'm moving out, I'm doing this. And I went, oh, who does that? Yeah. Oh, well. Right. Like I was like, oh, well, that he needs to do this for him. Great. And I know I've been grateful ever since, because it allowed me to look at myself differently. Okay, how did I contribute to that? What did I do? And Norma Jean, I'm sure you can share a story about relationships and how it shifted you. Come, I'm pulling her back in.
Yeah.
Your turn.
It's like the one thing that I can tell you I've learned from relationships is that regardless of who someone else is, you're still who you are. And a lot of when you're in a relationship and you're finding ways to have that commonality, that common ground with another being, you have to step back and you have to have that brutal honesty with yourself. Why did I get into this in the first place? What was the playing, what was it that was a contributing factor that was the purpose and reason for it to move beyond a connection to an attraction? And, a lot of my relationships taught me so many different things about myself, much less someone else, but more about me, about my choices, about, who I was throughout, the process of my own growth. And I've been through that, you know, when I was 26, I walked away with probably, you know, a broken heart. I mean, a literal, like, felt like my heart got broke because I had put so much of myself into something, given who I was then, and knew that there was, you know, a level of connection there that I knew innately was there. However, it just either wasn't the right time or wasn't the appropriate situation. It wasn't the correct individual, you know, that could, you know, carry that level of being themselves. So as, you know, as I came out of that relationship, I was hurt, I was angry, and I rejected a lot of about who I was then, because I had so many experiences then that I've come back to understand now that, you know, I had a choice to make then. And at that time, I rejected a lot of the being that I was in this vessel, in this body. And, you know, it was kind of like, from there, it was such a crazy time from that point forward until 33. And then I was like, okay, I'm done. I recognize what I did, and it's just time for me to get back to me. So, you know, the relationships after that, on and off, were more for my own growth. Knowing that, you know, over time, I had to understand that I'm not there to save anybody. I'm only there to make a connection. Can I understand the difference between understanding a connection and, you know, crossing that, your own boundary to understand? Are you making that connection because it's something that you just have a relatability to for, or are you getting to a place where you want it to be something more, you know, allowing that interaction to become an attraction when it never should? So these are just life lessons. They're there to help shape, mold, and form who you are for self first, so that you may recognize the truth of the identity of truth of connection, the truth of connection, and what it ultimately stands for. And, you know, one of those where sometimes it's just where us as humans come together and we just have a connection of communication and see what comes from it.
Yeah.
You know, it's one of those that I've experienced many different relationships, but I always came out stronger because I was able to sit back and reflect on who was I in all that. What did I come, you know, what could I bring forth within me to be brutally honest about and say, well, I played this part, I played this role, made this choice, and I made it from this place, and I made it from this perspective, I made it from, you know, wherever it may be. And once I recognized that, then I was able to transcend that. For I recognized, you know, who I was being, what I felt I needed to change within myself to make better choices for self, and know that I just wanted to have connections that were more of a profound connection where it was real, it was true, that I understood that I had to allow any and everyone to be who they were, and actually not fool myself into thinking that there was something that they were not first. But I had to learn that about self.
Yeah, that's, you know, I can't help but notice it all circles back again to accountability and alchemy, right? Where we're, to take that reflection, you have to be accountable for, again, all the pieces that we're adding to the scenario, how we were, like you were saying, perceiving things, not just the other person, but our intentions of why we were beginning that in the first place. And that's so hard for us to do, because in the early stages, in the first few relationships in life, because we don't have that sense of awareness yet. We're kind of conditioned externally to be, oh, this is why relationships are supposed to happen, or this is what I'm supposed to feel within the context of a relationship, forgetting about our own conscious input towards it. And the biggest thing that I learned out of those early ones, for the most part, through all of them really, is it's always, we choose our partners as a reflection of where we are internally. Always, 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 always. And
wait,
it's 100%, exactly 100%. The circumstances, the details, you know, again, each one of us, we've got free will that's going to change. But the bottom line is, you call and you are attracted to people that your soul is saying, this will elevate me, this will bring me to the net, this will, but again, we have to be aware and make that decision to allow all of that to alchemize through the different elements that take place and all the different experiences that happen. And again, knowing what it is that we're bringing to the table, because so much of it, especially coming from a masculine perspective, I understand that every single time I choose a partner or I lay with someone, which is why I choose carefully my partners, they become my equal. On a spiritual, a mental, a physical, on every single level, I am opening up to allow you to be fully who I am and to receive all of that. I will never look at that person, no matter what they're going through, no matter how harsh things are. You heard me at Vedette when I was at the darkest point of my life. I never badmouthed her at any point in time, and I never did through any argument either. I was always very evidently clear of knowing that not only was it a reflection of myself, but it's knowing that that is what I'm going to carry into relationships. How I treat someone at those points of change, of shift, of dynamic, that's where true character comes in. And that's where that point of reflection and accountability for me really takes a new shape of alchemy, because then we're going beyond the elements of experience and we're calling from inward to respond outward, not going, oh, this is happening, so I'm going to respond to the outward stimulus. You go, nope, this isn't part of my alchemy. I'm drawing from the inward out, and we step into a different state of wizardry and magic when we're alchemizing at that point.
Yeah, and it's being willing to realize, and I encourage you all to realize that when your energy, your reaction versus reaction respond will shift an entire situation. That is alchemy.
Yes.
How can you alchemize your entire life? How can you step into the I am more than I just believe? And don't play small. It's time. Now is your time to shine. 100%.
Yeah, without question. And you said it specifically too, and I talk about it in the book I'm getting ready to publish soon. Hopefully, everybody, I'll be posting the links and keeping you all posted. But I talk about this in my book, where there's a difference between response and reaction, and many of us, we use the terms intertwined, but there's a complete difference between the two. To me, a reaction is a very external stimuli. It can be manipulated. Reactions can be manipulated 100%. A response takes conscious presence, awareness, and really that sovereignty to say, whoa, hold on a second. I'm going to process this, and you're going to wait your little panties until I'm ready to go. And that's a response. It's a completely different, it's a sense of really present self in every scenario that you go into, to be able to respond and say, not only am I hearing what you're saying, but know that I'm processing it in such a way that I'm going to respond instead of react to it. And they go, oh, damn. Because most people, when they hear, they're hearing to just talk back. They're not actually responding to you. Notice how when you get to those, you're talking to certain, gurus or coaches, and then you come and you talk to people like us, you feel that different response, because we're responding to the energies, to the stimulus, to our intuition. We're responding to the experiences. We're not here to just get a reaction out of you. Wait till you see TikTok. That's what that's for.
Yeah, we were having a conversation about that earlier. And sometimes, what triggers you is actually a gift, because it's showing you what you need to look at within yourself.
Yep.
So if you can take that moment and turn it around and literally stop and go, why am I triggered by that?
Yeah.
And triggers are our best. Triggers can be the greatest gifts, as Tia said, but you got to understand, some triggers you may not be aware of, because depending on when things took place in your life, especially if you were very young, a lot of people, I'm coming to understand, have traumas that are only just body traumas. They don't have a memory, but the body can have a trauma, because a body has its own way of having a mechanism to protect the being that is with the body. So with triggers, we must understand that, like you were speaking to, Alex, do we have the ability first for self that if something's going on in our environment that's triggering us, or if there's someone that's triggering us by something they're saying or something they're doing, or in that, whatever actions they're taking, you got to realize and recognize something. You've got to step back and you got to say, is this about me?
Mm-hmm.
First and foremost. Okay. Because when something happens and you get triggered, it's either this individual is just responding and reacting because something within them is being triggered, and it may not have anything to do with you. And in that, these triggering, mechanisms are only just being brought to the surface because what we've done is what the body's doing right now, especially with these energies, the way they've been, is helping you to recognize and realize, hey, I've been holding on to something that we need to let go of. We need to release this because these energies are at this point where all I can do is show you now. I can't sit and hold this any longer, because when you created this emotion, which only means no motion, what you did was you took that emotion because you weren't allowed, or you're never taught, or you're never given the tools or the guidance to know
Or permission.
right, to have the feeling, to just allow that feeling to be what it needed to be so you can move through it. You took me and you put me in a prison, which is a prism. Okay. And in that, what happens is there was a geometric shape that basically became that prism that you took and imprisoned that emotion. That's why it got stuck. And then you put it in a part of your body.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting to use that terminology, because the thing that I go through in my teachings, when we break down emotion, I always look at it as energy in motion, emotion. When it comes up, when it surges through us, it's meant to be felt. It's meant to be released. It's meant to have its full existence and move on as a piece of energy. But we're taught to do exactly what you're talking about. Prism, trap it, focus on it, and make it an identity marker instead of allowing the energy in motion to flow, which in essence stops the motion. And then we wonder why everything starts coming out in these rages. We have these outbursts, we have these projections of things, because there's so much energy in motion that is not actually in motion. And it's just doing this in the prism through all the walls, all the way, bing, 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 ping ponging across the walls. Right. And you're 100% right. Where when we're able to step back and we realize that people's responses, again, knowing how I'm going to treat someone is a reflection of how I'm treating myself inside. You do that work for yourself first. You then get that reflection through other people on how they're treating you. And you go, oh, damn, you're in a dark ass place. Look at how you're talking to me right now, bro. Peace and love. Like, oh, I hope you find. It's a completely different response, because not only are they ping-ponging without that energy in motion, they also, and I know you guys know this as well, so many of the times when we're trying to go through these growth patterns, we're met with these opportunities. You either take it or you don't. It repeats itself. Opportunity shows up, you take it or you don't. Cycle repeats itself. Cycle repeats until you grow out of it. So often, when people aren't doing the shadow work and they aren't looking at themselves and seeing that reflection, and now they're unaware of how they're projecting that out into the world around them, they don't actually even realize that they treat people in that way to actually stir up the exact same response from them that first created the wound and somebody talked to them that way when they were a kid, or told them they weren't worthy, or whatever it was. And now they instinctively create the scenarios by treating people in that same way to get them to respond in the way that creates that stimulus for their mind. It's again, they're perpetuating their own cycles. And part of that is because they're so unaware of what they're putting out into the universe, knowing we are the creators of our own reality. You have to take that awareness, you have to take that shift. And sometimes it takes somebody taking a different response, looking at you and going, oh, wow, you're really trying to manipulate me into doing this, aren't you? You're that hurt. I refuse to do it. I'm going to love you instead. I don't have to do it close. I don't have to be hanging out with you and having coffees. I'm just going to give you love instead of anger. I'm going to give you light instead of darkness now. And it shifts them completely. It's a powerful tool.
It reminds me of Ho'oponopono, the Hawaiian prayer.
Yeah.
And forgiving yourself because you had a role in that relationship. Yes. It was intertwined. And so it's like this untangle, forgive, not push away, but often that resonance of love and forgiveness, that person can't handle it and they will leave.
The first time I did it, when I forgave after being as hurt as I was, the other person tried to start a fight with me, and I knew it. I knew it was going to happen, so I just didn't give in. And it was a complete blindside to the person because they weren't expecting it. She goes, "Aren't you fighting with me right now?" Because I'm not going to fight with you. That wasn't what this whole thing was about. And that's where we really learn that our power comes into play. You don't want to fight, don't fight. It's just that simple. Even if somebody keeps attacking you, having a defense against an attack is one thing, but if you don't want to fight, you just don't fight, because eventually the attacker they're going to get worn down. If you have your defenses up, or you go, I just won't be moved. I'm not going to push back. I just won't be moved. They will eventually run out of energy or find something else to distract. Things just don't, nothing's permanent. Nothing's permanent. It's just that simple. And this includes attacks. You don't have to necessarily always be passive. Attacking is, attack your dreams. Be aggressive about the things that you want to manifest in your world. There's certain energies, and that's where masculinity really comes into play too, where you're nurturing yourself enough to say, I believe that I deserve this, and now I'm going to go after and I'm going to do it. There's a very, very powerful drive that comes with that. And learning the balance of that and through these type of experiences where you're going, am I responding or am I reacting? And universe is going to get you at your Achilles heel, whether it's religion, whether it's your bank account, whether it's relationships. So many of us, it's our heart, right? Because we're heart-centered beings. It's very, very easy pickings for us. But yeah, for me, it was always women. It was my Achilles heel. So I had to learn very quickly who I was, because I wasn't showing up based off of my own standards and making my own decisions of how I was being alchemically present.
Yeah, absolutely. And so as we wrap this conversation up, Alex, I've got your website down below.
Perfect.
And in this stepping up and standing in your own power, and I know we'll be working together to create some courses. Yeah. What could they expect, like reaching out and working with you? What are you offering in this time, so it comes from your own mouth?
The biggest things that I would really say that I'm doing is helping discover not just the authentic self, but how to apply that through the different independent means of which you develop yourself uniquely, because all of us are going to have different backgrounds. We're going to have different likes. We're going to have different things that light up our soul. For me personally, Ninja Turtles. Ninja Turtles makes my soul light up ridiculously crazy. It's insane. And same with like my spirit walking. When I do spirit walking and I'm transporting in different dimensions for protection, I morph into a Power Ranger. There are so many different things that I use that light my soul up in a way. And I help people discover the vulnerability and accountability within themselves to learn how that alchemy transcends you to a different level than sitting in a content. Oh, I can't do that. That's embarrassing. Oh, I can't do that. That's not. You get to drop all of that when you come work with me, because I show you the links in between, and I show you how comfortable it is to just be you. And that's one of the most powerful tools that I think anybody gets to walk away with, is that comfort within themselves in any given situation. And you get to learn a few things about martial arts history with Ninjutsu too, where I've combined a lot of my metaphysical teachings and my martial arts history teachings into a philosophy and an application and practices that I call Seirei Sensei no Jutsu, which translates to the art of the spiritual warrior, which is also another course that I offer, where we learn a bunch of different spiritual techniques, certain meditations, certain practices, and that course will end up taking a life in and of itself. But I certainly like to offer myself as a mentor within discovering that you may not really know is deep down within you. And that's where the title of my book comes, hopefully soon, The Me in Metaphysics, and understanding that you are a part of everything that you are attempting to discover or unveil. You're already there. So let's help take the shades away and show you.
Absolutely. Cured by Cannabis says, haha, my man lit up when he said Ninja Turtles, laugh out loud, right? And it's finding, you know, what is that? Who is that superhero within you? What do you need to visualize to step in, right? I have a copper round at home of copper wire. And I'm like, oh yeah, Wonder Woman, bring it on. I got my copper wire ready. Because I can make those rods with it.
That's it. And that's where we really find that power of integrating the inner child, which is, you know, also certain work that I do as well. It's a bit of a separate subject I cover, but that integration of your inner child, you are the most authentic version of who you are when you're a kid, because you have no influences, you have no inputs, you just accept and experience, and you're doing as authentic. That's why they had a show, Kids Say the Darndest Things, because it's just authenticity coming out of it. Beautiful. Learning how to tap into that now with a conscious, developed mindset and knowing how it affects the quant. Oh my goodness, this is how you get to play in the ether, not just go, oh yeah, the ether's there. You're like, no, let's go for a swim. Let's go for a swim in the ether. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. And we didn't even get to talk tonight about, you know, plant medicine and all, and some of the other tools that can help you get out of your own way, but we will chat about that. Norma, did you have anything you want to close out with tonight?
No, I just, it's awesome to have you here, Alex. And I feel that you bring much information and knowledge and wisdom, you know, yourself to this platform. And it's great to see you. It's great to have you. Thank you. And
thank you. Yes. And thank you, David, sitting in the background listening.
Yes, thank you, sir.
Yeah, we appreciate you and all the listeners. Yes. If this resonated with you, please please share. It helps with the algorithm. Comment after the video. What resonated with you the most? Share with us, please. We want to hear from you. And tune in next Friday because we'll be back. Absolutely.
I'm not going anywhere.
No, it doesn't matter where we go. We always show up.
Yeah.
There you are.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no running away and hiding. Yeah, absolutely. All right, you guys, sending you much love. I know somebody else you know has a show right now, so go jump on it and cheer Dave on.
Yeah, all right. Sounds good.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.